influence on a game with 5 players on the floor than any one player can have in football. Thus meaning a football coach has to bring together 53 guys. That's the real trick. It's almost like the military in that way. That's why you see guys like Belichick, who are strict disciplinarians, getting everybody together on the same page, 53 different minds and egos, 53 different personalities, all working together towards a common goal. Football's just harder, man. It's harder to stay at the top. And because of that, it's a bigger puzzle, 53 pieces to the puzzle, not 5. Baseball has more players, but again, not like football. No, I'm telling you, the degree of difficulty in football is greater than it is in other sports to stay at the top for a coach and player duo. Have you ever thought about this for just a moment? Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Have you ever thought about this right now? What we're witnessing? I bring up Brady and Belichick. Are we witnessing like the GOAT in almost every sport? A week or so ago when filling in for Stephen A., I talked about that tennis was in this unique place, perhaps a unique place in sports history. You have the 3 greatest of all time all competing together against each other right now. Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal. You can't find any sport, any trio, at any given time where you could say, those are the 3 best to ever do it.
College football, there is a sense of urgency week in and week out because so much can change.
One of the themes our players have adopted this year has been to do more. 24-5 the last 2 seasons is good. It's not good enough.
You're going to hear from each team and each coach about how great they're going to be and what's next.
I've got the feeling that this is an open competition. He's just not handing the job to Jalen Hurts.
The only question about Georgia is can they get past Alabama?
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
It is the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. You can normally catch me 3 to 6 Eastern on all those same television and radio dials. I'm excited now to be joined by the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's Nick Saban in studio here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. What's up, Coach?
Not much, man. Missing Steven, tell him we wish him the best, but also tell him they don't make him like they used to, and there's not many of us left, or he'd be here today, the way I look at it.
Not many of what left?
Us, the old-fashioned guys that can get injured and respond quickly.
I love that you just called Stephen A. old. That's going to be my favorite part of this interview. Coach, listen, I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. 2010, you beat Colt McCoy, you beat Texas in the national championship game, and I'm watching postgame, and I'm watching your postgame press conference. And there's a question. The interviewer was probably ESPN. I wasn't here at the time, said to you, has this always been the goal? Was this what you were focused on? Was this the goal here at Alabama? And I'll never forget your response. And it's one that I've talked about continuously on my show and others. And you said, we're not very goal-oriented. We're process-oriented. That's how we get here. If it happens, it happens, but I'm focused on the process.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Well, I've said this many times before that outcomes are distractions. So when you focus on an outcome, it can create a lot of anxiety. What we'd like for our guys to focus on is what do we have to focus on to get the outcome that we want? All right, so that's what we try to define, and that's what we try to stay focused on, is what do I have to do to get the outcome? So you're focusing on your energy in the right direction. You're not getting affected by external factors. And just like if you say, okay, I want to try to win the Heisman Trophy, so I'm going to go out today and throw for 400 yards so I can win the Heisman Trophy. Probably not going to do a very good job. If you go out there and just say, this is what I have to do to throw for 400 yards today, take what the defense gives, make good reads, probably have a much better chance. All right, so that's kind of how we try to do it. We try to stay process-oriented. What do I have to do to accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish?
Nick Saban here on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain filling in. So if you were talking to a young guy who just got a head coaching gig in college football, what would you say is the biggest mistake that young coaches make?
I really can't answer that. I mean, I think that, coaching is a great profession. There's a lot of great people who've had a lot of great, very, very positive impact on a lot of young people. In terms of their personal development, making sure they do the right things so that they can develop a career off the field and graduate from school and helping them develop careers on the field. I think we all make mistakes. I think we've all done things that we wish we wouldn't have done. But I think for the most part, everybody's out there trying to find a better way to help players be successful.
What's the biggest mistake you've made in coaching?
Oh, boy. I don't know. Some of the things that I thought were big mistakes, turned out not to be mistakes. I remember when I was at LSU and we were playing Tennessee, who was number 2 in the country, and ready to go play in the playoff game then, the one-game championship that we used to have. They had John Henderson and a great defensive team, and we were behind 14-0. I said, we got to do something on offense here, or we're going to get beat 100-0, in the SEC championship game. So we have 4th down and inches on our own 29-yard line, and we go for it and get stuffed. We stop them. They kick the field goal, so now they're ahead like 17-0. And then we come back and win the game 31-20. And I'm like, I was dumbfounded on the sidelines for a whole quarter after making that call. I said, that's the dumbest thing you've ever done as a coach. And I thought, Miss Terry's even sitting in the press box saying, that's the dumbest thing you've ever done as a coach. I'm thinking everybody in the world thinks I'm the dumbest guy in the world. So after the game, the seniors come up to me and say, Coach, we really appreciate it that you went for it on 4th down. And I said, I don't think that was very smart. And they said, well, when you did that, it's the first time we thought that you thought we could win the game, that you were planning to win. So that's when we started planning to win. So what I thought was the dumbest thing, actually pretty smart, I guess.
So even your mistakes are successes is what the lesson is there, Nick Saban.
No, that's not the lesson. That's one lesson.
Nick Saban, head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, here on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain. I was talking to one of our ESPN radio hosts, Ian Fitzsimmons, who talked to you earlier today, and in an interview that will air on Freddie and Fitzsimmons tonight, and he was telling me you were talking about all these guys. It's John McKay, Rich Rodriguez, yourself, Fielding Yost, Jimbo Fisher, all come from a 10-mile radius in West Virginia. Now, I guess we have Jamaican sprinters, we have Norwegian bobsledders. Why do we have West Virginia big-time coaches?
I have no idea. I can't answer that. The only thing that I could come up with was, where we grew up, coal mining towns, the school was like the social center of the community. All right, so when we played a game on Friday night, the last guy out of town turned the lights out. I mean, it was the thing that was happening. So we had great coaches, and you didn't have a lot of other relationships besides your parents that had any influence on you at all. All right, so I don't know if it was so special to be involved in the program, because of the community, that it created a lot of interest for us. But, I never really wanted to be a coach. I never wanted to be a coach when I graduated from college. So,
what'd you want to be?
I wanted to be a general manager of a car dealership. And my wife had another year of school, and Don James asked me to be a graduate assistant. And I said, I don't want to go to graduate school, and I don't want to be a coach, so why would I do either one of those? And he talked me into it, said, your wife's got another year of school and all this. You can't move and take a job. You can't go anywhere else. So I did it. I loved it. And I've been doing it ever since. So...
And doing it at a pretty high level here. Nick Saban on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain. So one of the things I've talked about, Coach, recently on my show, I grew up, by the way, not so differently, a small town in Texas. There was one high school. Everybody cleared out on Friday nights. Everybody gathered around the same field and watched the same thing. But there seems to be this fascination with scheme right now, specifically in the NFL. I want to get coaches that can execute a certain scheme. Obviously, it's off the Sean McVay success and things like that. But what I feel like that I've seen is perhaps then a discount in leadership. Bill Belichick, yourself, you've adapted. You've gone from defense to the offenses you have now, and both. Do you think that there has been a de-emphasis or not enough put on when looking for a coach, leadership over who can execute the perfect scheme?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think there's been a lot of different schemes that have had success in the NFL, in college, in high school. I mean, some people win running a wing tee. People won the national championship running a wishbone. I mean, other people do it in the NFL, passing it 65% of the time, being an empty and all that kind of stuff. And so I think the most important thing to me is you got to do what your players can do, especially on offense. On defense, you got to play a system because the players have to really understand the system to be able to adapt to all the different types of things they're going to see. All right, but on offense, I really think you have to do what your players can do.
I think I've heard you tell that story. Was it when you were a high school quarterback?
Yeah.
Your coach said, throw it to the wide receiver, the best player on the team. That's all you have to do. Was that what the story was?
You got a left halfback that's the fastest guy in the state and a 3-time All-State wide receiver. Just one of those two guys need to get the ball. That was it. So I think you have to do what your players can do on offense. And I think that the good coaches, though, you mentioned Sean McVay, I think they realize that, and they take their system and they adapt it to the guys that they have so that those guys can execute and have success. And I don't think people realize that sometimes.
I'm curious, who do you read or think of or try to model or learn from in leadership?
Oh, man, I'm always reading something. I read.
What's the last big leadership book that you would tell me to read?
Right now I'm reading Why Are the Best the Best? I just read The Obstacle is the Way. I just read Stoics. So I'm always reading something, trying to figure out a better way to communicate to players and people in your organization how to stay motivated.
All right. Alabama head coach Nick Saban here on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain. I knew there'd be a lot of shows today that would ask you about Tua or Clemson or Trevor Lawrence. To be honest, when I met you, I wanted to talk to you about leadership. And,
that's great. I'm good. I love that.
Winston Churchill? Rank your leaders. Right now, we got a dinner party of Nick Saban. He gets 3 of the world's greatest leaders, coach, football, politicians. Who makes the table?
Well, I think Winston Churchill certainly would be one. I think Roosevelt was one of the best leaders that we had through a depression, a world war, a lot of different issues, here. John F. Kennedy was a great leader. There's been a lot of great leaders in our profession, but I don't think that the significance of what they lead and what they do and the consequence of what they do is anything great to compares to some of the things that great leaders in the world have done to either keep us all safe or, make the world a better place for us.
All right, Alabama head coach Nick Saban on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Thanks a lot, Coach. I appreciate your time. All right, coming up to close out the show, your calls here, 888-729-3776. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A.
Your radio, your computer, your phone. Or just tell your smart speaker to play ESPN Radio.
Now playing ESPN Radio.
Take ESPN everywhere.
Barbasol making razors? Well, that's a no-brainer. Try the Barbasol Ultra 6 Plus razor today.